Hi there. So on this video I thought I would wrap up the initial set of videos with what I need to do, what I know, what I don't know, and the issues therein. So to begin with, I have in my arsenal a small amount of Google foo. There is surprisingly little available on the internet on these machines. You know, lots of suns and things like that. There are places where you can find people who have used them, who have written down tips and tricks, things like that. Lots of people have mirrored all of the field engineer manuals and such, and Oracle still has a lot of the documentation available on their website. It's incredibly convenient. Cray does none of these things. They do, well, okay, that's not true. They do have some of the Cray doc stuff there. However, it mostly focuses on Unicode, the software side, things like that, rather than the hardware, which is really what I need help with at the moment. Certainly the older stuff, the J90 series, is not featured. Perhaps the newer stuff is, the XD and so on, but the older stuff is not. I have my friends, Jim and Dave, and hopefully by this time I will have some more friends who can help me out in figuring out what I need to know, maybe a couple field engineers, we'll see. I have some documentation. So I have Unicode install manuals, I have network manuals, Unicode addenda, I have some manuals that have been given to me, which is very exciting. I've got a Unicode administration guide and then a Unicode installation guide for the Cray J90. Now, not only are both of these incredibly useful, particularly the installation guide, which gives a lot of hints on how these systems interoperate, how the iOS runs iOS-V, and that kickstarts the processor cabinet and all of that stuff. Also, I own manuals with great research on it. This is very exciting and incredibly useful. I also have some site installation manuals, some hardware installation manuals. This is mostly about installing a machine in a location rather than any hardware information on that machine. So these are complete and absolute gold as well, particularly the hardware installation manual. And then I have some of the pictures that involve the installation and deinstallation of a machine. So I have manuals. I'm supposed to get a proper hardware manual in the next coming weeks, which is fantastic. That is going to be huge. Although I don't actually know what's inside it, but I have high hopes. I have media. This is the SWS software for installing the SWS and I believe some of the iOS-V software. So that is really handy. This is an older pile of software. Then I have newer software. One of the later releases of SWS, later release of Unicode, NQE, some of the installable modules. NQE is the network queuing environment, I believe I've got that correct, which allows you to submit jobs to the Cray. I have Cray doc documentation downloaded. So this is very, very, very handy. Without this, I mean all of this, which came from my friend Jim, is really what's gotten me to a state where I actually believe I might have a hope in hell of getting this sorted, because getting the software is the hardest part. So much of the Cray software no longer exists. Certainly the Cray 1 software, as far as I'm aware, there are no known copies of the Cray 1 software. I don't know about Cray 2. Cray no longer has most of the system software that they produced. EL98s is my understanding. All of that was shipped on tape, probably DAT rather than reel-to-reel. They do not have any of those anymore. Cray does not have the software to their own machines. So if you have an EL98, you need to sucker an install set of somebody else, is my understanding. So this stuff is absolute gold. Due to how recent the system is, this is from 1995-ish, that makes a big difference. What I need is more documentation, hardware documentation in particular. Most of what I know I have picked up from friends, or I have garnered obliquely from documentation. I need a lot of documentation, particularly on the iOS stuff. That one's a big question mark box for me, so I've got an awful lot to learn there. This is the rear bulkhead of the processor cabinet. You can see Cray Research, Chippewa Falls, model J916. And this is another problem I have. Not this, but this. J916 Syria. Some muppet has ripped off the serial number sticker, and I think this is the only place on this machine where the serial number is marked down. This is a problem because it appears that most of the software gets tied to a serial number, and it's possible that the iOS has the serial number already written into its NVRAM. It might be stored somewhere, I'm not sure. Also, the license, which I'll talk about in a second, is probably tied to a serial number, and if I don't have a freaking serial number, I've got a big problem. This is a issue. I don't know how big or bad it is yet. I know that it's coming down the pike. I am hopeful it won't be too much of an issue to deal with and I can just make a serial number up, but that's a problem. The next problem is this. There's an awful lot of cabling here, and I pulled some of it down, but I'm not sure what to do with a lot of this stuff. There are an awful lot of disk cabinets. I do not need this many disk shelves, I suspect. I don't know how much I need. There are some guidelines, but not positive on that. I don't know how to wire these things up if I decide to only use a certain number of disks, how that has to go. Somebody has jerry-rigged one of these. I don't know what that means. I've got a fair idea I can fix that. I can put it back to the way it used to be based on where there are holes in the cabling. The Y1 cables are another question. So far I've found 5 of them. There are 6 plugs on the processor boards. I don't know if that means that I am missing something. Maybe I just haven't found it in here yet. Maybe it's... oh, look. I think I just found it. There's one that's getting tucked down in there. I think it's fallen down somewhere. Oh, well, maybe there's all 6 of them. I'm okay. That doesn't help me so much, though, is I have no idea which one of these get plugged into which machine. There are 4 iOS board pairs in here, I believe. I think I counted 4 the other day. I have 3 pairs here. So I'm not quite certain what that is. Maybe there's a head pair and that doesn't have a cable that connects to it and it just controls the others on the bus. I don't know. I believe that the 2 ports are numbered, P1 and P2 per board, and these are numbered P1 and P2, so I should be able to get them around the right way per iOS module, but I don't know which ones connect to which processor modules. I do not have the documentation, I believe, to explain what to do with this. That I've got to figure out. There is some spare cables hanging around here which are just up and out of reach. They're DB9s, things like that. I think they're probably part of the sequencer system that told the cabinet, the processor cabinet, how to start. There's going to be cabling that goes between this system and the processor system for the sequencing and things like that, into the central control unit to tell it to reset. I have to figure out all of the ends that I have, and then where there might be holes that they go into. That one's a bit of a puzzle. Hopefully, with a bit more documentation, it will become a little more self-evident. Hopefully. And then, will the software install work as easily as I'm hoping? The SWS software, the J90 control software that runs on the Sun workstation, will it install on any version of Solaris or won't it? I don't know. I'm hopeful they're smart. I'm hopeful that Solaris is that consistent. I suspect it is, being an enterprise operating system. There are, or rather, I have found no notes suggesting that the software only works with certain Solaris releases. There is the lack of 10b2. I am hoping that this won't be too much of an issue, and that I should be able to find an S-Bus card with a 10b2 or a thin net coax connector on it. I believe, and I might be making this up, that the Happy Meal Ethernet cards came with 10b2 and twisted pair, and so I should be able to get a combo card. I have used a lot of Suns in my time. As you have probably noticed, I have never actually installed an S-Bus card on any of them. So I don't know what's involved in getting Solaris to find the card and get everything working. And if it's a machine that's not like a SparkStation 5, where there wasn't an onboard Ethernet controller, at least I didn't think there was, will the SWS software find the 10b2 in the right place? Can it be configured? I don't know. It might make some bad assumptions. God knows there's enough software out there that does. Hopefully, I can jerry-rig anything so that the Ethernet comes up in the right order, so that 10b2 is in the right place, all of that crap. I'm not certain. I do recall that Solaris likes to name its devices, so there's EN0 and EL0 and HME0 and things like that, depending on the hardware device. So that might actually make a lot of this really easy for me, but I'm not 100% certain. And then there's the big one. Does the hardware work? It was supposed to when it was uninstalled, but I'm not certain. One of the previous people nicked a couple of the processor boards. Is it able to be configured as it is to work with two missing processor boards? Do all of the iOS board pairs work? Do any of the SCSI controllers work? These things I'm less worried about. There's a whole lot of limited logic there. I mean, it's all solid state, so all of that crap should just work. The processor boards and the RAM boards make me a bit nervous. Those are special. Yeah. We will have to see. We might find that we get to that point and discover that both the processor boards are shot, and then that's it, game over. I really hope that's not the case. I really hope that enough of it works that we're good to go, but we'll have to see. That one's a real unknown. And as I mentioned before, the iOS's 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs, 3Y1 sets. I was mistaken, by the way, in pulling the drawer out. The cable end that I found that was going in was actually from the bulkhead. A bunch of these cables have been pulled out from the cable chain, so not sure what that's about either. So I'll have to trace these cables back and figure out where the hell they go, because there is 1, 2, 3, 4 sets. So it's possible that I'm missing some Y1 cables. Or it's possible there's a terminator involved that I'm missing. I'm not sure. So once I figure that out, I have to install the software on it. The SWS software probably shouldn't be too much of a pain. The iOS V software install, I'm hoping, should be relatively brain dead. It looks like most of the hard work is pulling the kernel off the SWS in the first place. I don't know where it stores configuration information. I am hoping that all of that crap is NFS'd to these machines from the SWS, in which case no local storage and I can configure this from scratch. If there is any kind of storage in here, and it's going to be something like NVRAM, I don't know how upset it's going to be if there's a configuration change. The only thing that's different, obviously beyond any manual recabling that somebody's done, is the missing processor boards. Maybe I can find a couple of replacements. I don't know. The fact that there's only 2 mezzanine Y1 boards in one of these modules and there's blanking plates on the others suggests to me that that was run in that configuration at some point. It might be that this really was a 916 that was in a 98 and somebody stole one of the blanking plates and it never actually had a full 916 configuration with the 16 processors. I'm not certain. I don't know the history. So if I get iOS V installed on this, that should mean that the iOS and the SWS are talking. And then I have to figure out if I can get iOS V booting Unicos and things like that. There is an install procedure for Unicos where it will set up the disks, get files copied to the disks, so on and so forth. That hopefully will be relatively straightforward. The Unicos install, I have about 3 manuals worth, and then I actually have a couple others that I've pulled in PDF form. So I'm hoping that that should be trivial-ish. I believe I said in the previous video, Unicos 9 and before, and I don't know what the earliest version of Unicos that ran on a J90 is. It might have been 9. That was shipped on DAT, on tape, and so you shoved it in the DAT drive that's in this machine here, and it would install onto the processor cabinet, or rather onto the disk arrays here, from tape. The documentation for Unicos 9 makes that very clear. There's no mention of installing from any other media. I was hopeful that that would not be the case with 10, or it could be bypassed. The 10 documentation makes no mention of the DAT whatsoever, except in the case of doing system backups. And the installation comes off CD, it appears. So that's the good news. If I'm lucky, I can install Unicos 10 straight off CD, partition up the disks, life will be good. Maybe. The partitioning of the disks is sort of that sticky point, and I did mention this in another video as well. This comes back to this param file. The param file specifies everything in the system. If you make a change in the param file, you add a processor, it's going to look for that processor. You pull a processor out, it no longer talks to that processor. Same with the memory board. You tell it where it is, you tell it how much memory it has. The param file tells each of the partitions how they're built across which disks, on which shelves, on which iOS modules. Which again means I have to figure out how to address which iOS module is which. And follow a hell of a lot of cabling to figure out which freaking disks go to which iOS modules. That'll be fun. And I have to figure out how the disks have to be laid out. I said that there are some minimum requirements for some of the partitions. Now, a lot of that is actually documented. How big root A, root B have to be, user A, user B, those sorts of things. But they're listed in blocks. and they're minimum. It might be that on a single shelf with 40 gigs, I should be able to install everything. Frankly, I should bloody well hope so. Unicos is not that new. It ships on a CD. Hell, I can get a full Debian install on like 3 gigs, so, or a stripped down one on 200 meg. So I should be able to simplify this grossly and just partition up a couple of these disks and make it real easy. But then I've got to figure out how to do that. I've got to figure out how to address the disks. It really would like you to spread the partitions across multiple IOSs so that you spread that load. Well, I'm not really looking for performance, let's be honest. I just want the bloody thing to come up. So I might be able to make this easy, but then of course the installer might be really clever and get in my way. We'll have to find out. And that leads to the last issue, and that is software license. My understanding is Unicos 10 requires a software license from Cray. They have sold hobbyist licenses. I have no idea what they cost. I know that at one point a commercial license for Unicos 10 was $25,000. There is no way in hell I'm spending 25 grand on anything. I am hopeful that I can find the right person. I haven't had any response yet at Cray who can work with me to get a hobbyist license going. Whatever that might cost, I don't know. It might still be above my price range. If it is a couple of grand, I got to figure out what I'm going to do there, because I've never spent that much on any computer of anything I own. So I got to work that one out. And if I get that license sorted, what if it's tied to the serial number, which I don't have? Anyways, these are my problems. With luck, we'll take them one at a time, knock them off one after one, and there won't be anything insurmountable. These machines are recent enough that there should be a reasonable pool of people out there who know how to use them, who know how to configure them, who have done installs, who have done operating system installs, who can point me in the right direction, and with luck, we'll find them. So this video was filled with lots of naysaying, and this one's a bit of a Debbie Downer. My apologies for that, but I wanted to give you guys an understanding what the heck we're facing here. It is a unique piece of equipment. There are so few of these left, even though I believe that there were more J90s made than any other Cray. Certainly of the older Vector styles. I am hopeful. I have a whole bunch of documentation. I have software. I think that this is going to work. We'll just have to take it one step at a time, and I will bring you guys with me. If you have been, thank you so very much for watching. Hope you guys have a good day.